You know that feeling. Swimming in information, but still thirsty for real clarity.
Yeah, like trying to see the forest for the trees, right?
Exactly. Well, today we're grabbing our mental machetes, trying to cut a clear path.
Good plan. Because there's been a real buzz lately around alien registration requirements here in the U.S.
A buzz, and maybe some confusion, too.
Definitely some confusion. So for you, the learner, we're zeroing in on what actually matters, what the requirements really are.
Right, we've waded through, well, quite a bit. The official USCIS site, of course.
Uh-huh.
Some sharp legal analysis from nolo.com, FAQs from different orgs.
And even Reddit, right? To get a feel for the chatter.
Yeah, exactly. See what people are actually saying, what questions they have. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to pull out the essentials about who needs to register, what documents need to carry, just the core stuff so you can grasp it without getting, totally bogged down.
Makes sense. Where should we start? The trigger for all this recent attention.
Yeah, let's start there. What sparked this? It feels like it came up fairly suddenly for a lot of people.
Okay, so the key event is really Executive Order 14159. It's titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion.
Wow, okay. Strong title.
It is. It was issued back on January 20th, 2025. And it specifically told the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, to really ensure compliance with existing registration rules.
Existing rules. So this wasn't brand new law from the order itself.
Exactly. These rules are in Section 262 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA. It's been there.
But the order basically said, hey, start enforcing this.
Pretty much. It stated that failure to register should be treated as a priority for both civil and criminal enforcement.
Okay, so it took an existing rule and just put a spotlight on it, made it a priority.
Precisely. And that shift in seriousness, that's why it's suddenly on everyone's radar. That's really key for you, the learner, to understand why this is a big topic now.
Right. Okay, so with this renewed focus, who exactly has to register? Or maybe re-register? Who needs to be looking at this G325R form?
All right, so according to USCIS, the main group is all non-citizens aged 14 or older who've been in the U.S. for 30 days or more and who weren't already registered and fingerprinted when they applied for their U.S. visa.
So if that initial entry process didn't include registration and fingerprinting,
then yes, if you're here over 30 days, this applies. And the deadline is crucial. You have to register before those first 30 days are up.
before the 30 days expire. Okay, so say someone on a visitor visa maybe didn't get registered then, stays longer than a month. They need to do this.
That's generally the situation, yes. And it's not just adults.
Oh.
Parents or legal guardians have to register any kids under 14 who are in the same boat, not registered on entry, here for 30-plus days.
Also within that first 30 days.
Also within that first 30 days. So it's a family thing if younger kids are involved.
Right. Now, what about people who turn 14 while they're here? Maybe they were registered as a child, or maybe not.
Good question. Yes, any non-citizen, doesn't matter if they were registered before or not, if they turn 14 while in the U.S., they have to re-register and get fingerprinted.
Re-register.
And they have 30 days from their 14th birthday to do it. Think of it as a required administrative step at that age.
A sort of registration milestone. Now, this form, G325R you mentioned, biometric information registration. How does that work? Is it paper?
Online? It's online and must be submitted through a USCIS online account.
Okay.
And here's the key part. Each alien, each non-citizen needing to register needs their own account.
Their own account, even a 5-year-old.
Even a 5-year-old. The parent or guardian sets up the account in the child's name and submits the form for them, but it has to be an individual account.
Wow. Okay, so an individual digital footprint for everyone. No paper forms for this specific registration then.
For this G325R process, no, it's all digital.
Which, hopefully makes it smoother in some ways, but surely there are people already considered registered, right?
Right.
Who doesn't need to file this new form.
Oh, absolutely. A very large number of non-citizens are already covered. Primarily, anyone who's been issued certain documents that count as proof of registration.
Like what? Green card holders.
Exactly. Lawful permanent residents, people with green cards, Form I-5551, they're already registered. Also, people who are paroled into the U.S.
Paroled?
Yes. Even if their parole period has technically expired, they are generally considered registered.
Okay, so having that formal status or parole record usually means you're good on this front.
Typically, yes. And there are others, non-immigrants who got an I-94 or I-94W when they entered paper or electronic.
Right, the arrival departure record.
Uh-huh. Even if the authorized stay on it has passed, they're generally registered. Same for anyone who got a visa before their last entry.
Okay.
Also, if someone's in formal removal proceedings with DHS, they're considered registered in the system.
Right. The government definitely knows they're here then.
Exactly. And anyone with an employment authorization document, an EAD card, that usually means prior registration.
So the pattern seems to be, if you went through a formal entry, got work authorization, or have LPR status, you're likely okay.
That's a good summary. And it also includes people who applied for a green card using certain forms, like the I-485 adjustment application, and gave fingerprints.
Even if the green card wasn't approved.
Even if it was denied, if they went through that process with fingerprints using one of the specified forms, like I-485, I-687, I-691, I-698, I-700, they've likely met the requirement. Border crossing card holders, too.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground. So for you, the learner, if you have one of those documents or went through those specific application types with biometrics, you probably don't need to worry about filing the G325R.
Correct.
Now let's flip that. Who isn't usually registered? Who are the ones who really need to pay attention to this renewed push?
Okay, the main group here is, well, individuals who entered the U.S. without inspection, admission, or parole.
So people who cross the border without authorization.
Essentially, yes. If they haven't since gone through some other process that registered them, they likely need to do this.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
Canadian visitors who entered at a land port of entry and didn't get any specific evidence of registration are also generally not registered.
Okay, so informal entries are a key category.
Definitely. And also people who might have applied for certain immigration benefits but used forms not listed in the regulations as conferring registration.
Like, say, DACA or TPS applicants.
Exactly. If they applied for something like deferred action or TPS and they didn't separately receive one of the registration documents we listed earlier, like an EAD or I-94 derived from it, then just applying for DACA or TPS itself doesn't automatically mean they are registered for this purpose.
So just applying for some benefit isn't enough. It has to be tied to those specific forms or result in specific registration evidence.
Precisely. It's quite specific in the regulations.
Got it. Are there any, like, total exceptions, people who just don't have to register at all?
Yes, a couple of very specific ones. American Indians born in Canada entering under a specific section of the INA, Section 289. And members of the Kickapoo Traditional Tribe of Texas entering under their specific act. These are narrow statutory exceptions.
Very specific groups.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, so we've covered who needs to register. Now, this obligation to carry proof, this seems to be causing a lot of anxiety, judging by online discussions.
You're right, it is. And the thing is, this requirement for non-citizens 18 and older to carry registration evidence, it's actually been law for a long time. INA Section 264E.
So another existing law getting new attention.
Exactly. The executive order just put it back in the spotlight, increasing awareness and, yeah, anxiety.
What counts as evidence of registration that people need to carry?
Well, it varies. For green card holders, it's the green card itself, the I-551.
Simple enough.
For those with work permits, it's the EAD card, the I-766.
Okay.
For many others, it's often a combination, like a government-issued photo ID passport, maybe a real ID state license, plus their I-94 record, paper or printed electronic, and then usually status-specific documents, too.
Like what?
Like an I-20 for an F1 student, a DS-2019 for a J-1 exchange visitor, maybe an I-797 approval notice for an H-1B or O-1 worker.
So it really depends on your specific status.
It absolutely does. TN or E3 workers usually need their passport plus I-94, maybe an I-797A. So yeah, for you, the learner, it's crucial to know what applies to your situation.
And what about people using this new G325R process? What's their proof?
Good point. When they register online, they'll get a USCIS proof of G325R registration notice in their online account.
A notice?
Yes, it's a downloadable PDF. They print that out, and that becomes their evidence of registration to carry.
Okay, so a printed PDF for the newly registered online. But the main point for everyone 18 plus who must register is carry some valid proof.
At all times.
At all times. That sounds strict.
It is, and the January executive order signaled a clear intent for stricter enforcement of that rule.
What happens if you don't have it, if you're stopped and can't produce it?
It's classified as a misdemeanor. The penalties can be fines up to $5,000, potentially jail time up to 30 days, or both.
Wow. $5,000 or 30 days for not carrying a card or document.
There's significant potential consequences, yes.
Now, we saw some online buzz, like on Reddit, even a voicemail someone mentioned. about mandatory carrying starting like April 11th? Was that a new law kicking in then?
That's a really important clarification. No, it wasn't a new law starting April 11th.
Okay.
The obligation to carry proof, as we said, is old law. That date likely relates to the enforcement push, the government signaling, we're taking this existing rule more seriously now, likely tied to the rollout or emphasis following the executive order.
So not a new rule, just turning up the volume on enforcing an old one.
Exactly. An important distinction.
The Reddit threads also brought up this practical worry. People hesitant to carry their original green card, for instance. Worried about losing it
Or having it confiscated, yeah. And the difficulty getting it back.
Right, so some were talking about carrying photocopies even though they kind of knew it wasn't technically right. What's the official line on copies?
The law, INA 264E, is very clear. It says you must carry the certificate of alien registration or receipt card, the original.
No mention of copies.
No provision for copies being legally sufficient. Nolo.com points this out too. So while carrying a copy might feel safer for the document itself,
It doesn't meet the letter of the law.
technically no. It doesn't fulfill the requirement to have the original on your person.
But those concerns about confiscation are real, right?
Yeah.
That puts people in a tough spot.
It absolutely does. It highlights a real dilemma. Follow the strict letter of the law and risk losing a vital original document during an encounter, or carry a copy for safety but be technically non-compliant. It's a difficult balance with real-world risks involved.
Definitely a tricky situation. What about someone who just arrived as an immigrant, waiting for their first green card in the mail? What do they carry?
Ah, yes. In that case, when they enter with their immigrant visa, they usually get a temporary I-5501 stamp right in their passport. That passport, with that stamp, serves as their temporary proof of LPR status until the physical card arrives, so they should carry the passport.
The stamped passport is the temporary evidence.
Got it. Okay, moving on slightly. Address changes. Another requirement we saw mentioned frequently.
Yes, and another one with a strict deadline. All registered non-citizens must report any change of address to USCIS within 10 days of moving.
10 days. That's quick.
It is another long-standing rule getting fresh emphasis. So for you, the learner, if you move, that 10-day clock starts immediately.
How should people report it? Is it online too?
USCIS strongly encourages using the online account. It's usually fastest and creates the best record.
But if someone can't use the online tool?
There's still the paper, Form AR11, Aliens Change Your Address card. So online is preferred, but the paper option exists.
Okay. And consequences for not reporting within 10 days?
Again, potentially quite serious. It's also a misdemeanor, possible fines up to $5,000, jail up to 30 days, or both.
Same as not carrying proof. Similar penalties, yes, but there's more. Failure to report an address change can actually make someone deportable.
Deportable for not sending in a form.
Unless, and this is the caveat, unless the failure was reasonably excusable or wasn't willful. But yes, deportability is a potential consequence listed in the law. It underscores how seriously they take knowing where registered non-citizens reside.
That is, wow, very serious. Are there different rules for students?
Yes, slightly different process. F1 and M1 students report their address change within 10 days to their designated school official, the DSO.
The DSO at their school.
Right. The DSO then updates the government system, SEVIS. J1 exchange visitors report to their responsible officer, or RO, who also updates SEVIS within 10 days.
So they report through their school or program sponsor.
Correct. And critically, just telling the post office you moved by forwarding mail is not enough for USCIS or SEVIS purposes. It's a separate immigration requirement.
Good point. USPS forwarding doesn't count. Okay, one last but really crucial point USCIS stresses. Registration is not the same as immigration status. Why is this so vital to understand?
It's absolutely fundamental. Being registered, having registration proof like that G325R notice or even a green card, that act of registration itself doesn't give you legal status.
It doesn't make you legal.
No, it doesn't create a right to be in the U.S. It doesn't grant work authorization. It doesn't provide any other immigration benefit. It's simply the government recording your presence, maybe collecting biometrics.
So your actual status, LPR, student, visitor, whatever, comes from your visa or your adjustment application, something else entirely.
Exactly. Registration is a procedural requirement tied to being present here. Your legal permission to be here and under what conditions is a separate matter defined by other parts of immigration law.
So someone could be registered but still be out of status or lack permission to work.
Correct. The two concepts are distinct. Registration is about being known to the system. Status is about the legal basis for your presence and rights.
Phew. Okay, this has been quite the deep dive into some fairly complex rules.
It's a lot to absorb.
Yeah. So just to quickly recap for you, our listener,
Yeah.
we've talked about this renewed focus on alien registration thanks to that January 2025 executive order.
We detailed who needs to register, mainly those not registered on entry, here 30-plus days, or anyone turning 14 here.
Right. And that critical requirement for those 18 plus to carry their registration proof at all times.
Along with the potential penalties for not doing that, or for failing to report address changes within 10 days.
And crucially, that registration doesn't equal immigration status or benefits.
And remember, this is all based on the official source's USCIS legal analysis to give you, the learner, the clearest picture possible.
Definitely. But even with official rules, as those online discussions showed, there's still, real-world complexity, anxiety.
Understandable anxieties for sure. The practical side of carrying documents, the implications of stricter enforcement. It's not just abstract rules for people living it.
Yeah. Which kind of leads to a final thought, maybe for you, the learner, to chew on. Given that these laws, registration, carrying proof, they've been around a long time, but now there's this big push for enforcement. What does that mean? Like, what are the wider ripples?
Yeah, what are the broader implications for daily life, for community interactions here in the U.S.?
How might this change how we think about immigration or what non-citizens experience day to day?
It's definitely something worth considering beyond just the letter of the law.
For sure. We'll link to the USCIS site and other resources in the show notes if you want to dig even deeper.
And as always, if this brings up personal questions about your own situation, the best step is always talking to a qualified immigration lawyer.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this important deep dive with us today.